Thanks for joining me today. I'd like to start by saying a special thank you to all those who expressed condolences to my family on the loss of my baby sister. Thank you. Thank you for your support and your love. I also want to start today by recognizing Canadian Mental Health Month. Many Manitobans are trying to balance one of the most challenging times in their lives, and they're trying to balance those challenges with many other tasks like caring for family and other community members, and dealing with grief, dealing with information overload, dealing with stress. The health and well-being of Manitobans continues to be our top priority during these uncertain times. I wanted to just update you on our online mental health support program that we pioneered here in Manitoba. It's the first of its kind in Canada. It's been receiving increased endorsement and support from right across the country, coast to coast to coast. There have been it's a full-page promotional article in the Globe and Mail last week encouraging the adoption and use of this type of program for assisting people during this pandemic. So I'm proud of the fact that we've led the way in Manitoba in introducing this service. We have over 1,700 individuals right now in Manitoba that are receiving treatment. And I want to remind Manitobans that this service is available free of charge to anyone who is 16 or over, who's feeling uncertain or worried or has stress or anxiety as a consequence of COVID. The challenges that you're facing are real. You don't have to feel alone. The pressures of caring for your loved ones have never been greater. The uncertainty of what life might look like post-COVID can feel overwhelming. So there is hope and there is support for you because together we can get through this. Supports are waiting for you now, so if you're interested in getting some mental health support, please just sign up at manitoba.ca/COVID-19, manitoba.ca/COVID-19. The COVID-19 pandemic has created, to put it mildly, difficulty for all Manitobans, all Canadians, people around the world. But the group that has been especially vulnerable has been our senior citizens. Our senior citizens built this province. We owe them a debt of gratitude for their hard work and their perseverance and their commitment to making Manitoba and Canada a wonderful place. Nos aînés ont construit cette province. Nous leur devons toute leur gratitude pour leur travail acharné, leur persévérance et leur engagement à faire de Manitoba la meilleure province du Canada. But as we approach Manitoba Day, we know that seniors across our province have been struggling these past couple of months because of COVID-19. Many are facing increased financial hardships. They now have to pay for things they didn't have to before to stay safe, to pay extra for grocery deliveries, for example, or purchasing and learning to use technology at home so that they can stay in touch with family members and with friends and with loved ones they miss. So today our government is announcing a program to show our appreciation for our seniors. This is a $45 million program. It will offer direct support for all Manitoba seniors to help lessen their financial burdens caused by COVID-19. As part of the Manitoba Protection Plan, the Seniors Economic Recovery Credit will deliver a $200 one-time refundable tax credit to Manitoba seniors facing additional costs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Donc aujourd'hui, notre gouvernement annonce un soutien direct immédiat de 45 millions de dollars à tous les aînés du Manitoba afin d'alléger leur fardeau financier cassé par COVID-19. Dans le cadre du plan de protection du Manitoba, le crédit pour la relance économique des aînés offrira un crédit d'impôt remboursable unique de $200 aux aînés de Manitoba confrontés à des coûts supplémentaires en raison de la pandémie de COVID-19. This payment will provide seniors with some of the additional support they need during this very, very challenging time. This financial support will come quickly, as we will have checks mailed to approximately 225,000 seniors this month. Our government has begun to carefully reopen Manitoba's economy this week. This credit payment is putting $45 million more into the hands of Manitoba's seniors right away. Our senior citizens need assistance in these tough times. We can't relieve all the stress they are experiencing during this public health crisis, but we can make it somewhat more affordable for them. All Manitobans are working together to get through this pandemic, and seniors throughout our province deserve our respect, our love and respect, and our extra help and support as well. Our government is providing assistance now through our Manitoba Protection Plan and the Seniors Economic Recovery Credit. We have been a leader. We have been recognized now by the Privy Council of Canada as being among Canada's most fulsome governments in terms of offering economic and social measures which respond to this COVID challenge. We have been at the forefront of supporting our frontline healthcare system and the workers who work there, who we thank again, and others as well in our social services and our education system. And we are at the forefront in supporting our small business community as well. And today we are at the forefront of helping Manitoba's seniors as well. While Manitoba's case numbers continue to appear to be low, this does not mean the risk of COVID-19 is low. Rather, this is a reflection of Manitobans doing the necessary things to protect themselves and one another, a reflection of the fundamental practices that you have adopted as citizens of our beautiful province. And so I thank you and ask you to continue to adhere to these fundamentals as we move forward. Social distancing can work and can help. Make sure you continue to do these things. Through good planning, Manitoba has been able to get ahead, and Manitobans have been able to get ahead of the COVID-19 situation and to flatten the curve. And we want to stay ahead of this virus. We do not want to chase it. We do not want a COVID comeback. And so it depends on us to make sure we do everything in our power to stick to those fundamentals. So I thank you for doing that, for being Manitobans, for maintaining the reputation of being the most friendly of people, for maintaining your calm in the face of pressure. That's when it really shows. For being kind at a time when you yourself are dealing with tremendous stresses. To be safe at a time when being safe means you are actually helping others to be safe as well. There's no room for complacency. We need 100% support, 100% commitment by Manitobans to avoid a COVID comeback. Again, I say thank you to Manitobans. I encourage Manitobans once again to stay positive, encourage one another, help each other. We'll be back. Together we can beat this thing. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you will have one preliminary question and one follow-up. Up first today from City News, Jonas.
Good morning, Mr. Premier, and our condolences on your family's loss. Our thoughts are with you as you work through this time indeed. As we talk about the seniors' aid, is this going to be for every senior in Manitoba? Can you just explain what folks at home need to know regarding it?
Manitoba Finance is going to proactively mail advance payments to seniors based on all those who filed a 2018 income tax return. So all senior tax filers will be eligible. Seniors will have until May 12th to advise Manitoba if they've had a mailing address change. Manitoba Finance, I should say. Those who don't get a check in the mail in May will be able to claim the $200 seniors credit on their 2020 income tax return.
And a quick follow-up, as far as we move into these supports for seniors, and we are kind of lucky here in Manitoba, I suppose, that we haven't seen any outbreaks in care homes. As we move forward through this, I suppose that's going to be a strong direction from your government to ensure that seniors are protected.
Absolutely, Jonas. We've all seen the reports and the sadness that we feel, as I'm sure it's magnified in the seniors' homes of our own province as well, the fear as well. As we see seniors being disproportionately impacted across the country and around the world, it gives pause to reflect on how important seniors are to our province and our country and how thankful we should be for them.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Good morning, Premier Carol, at the Free Press. There are a lot of Manitobans who are struggling and in need of support right now. Why focus on all seniors and not people in dire financial straits? Why focus on giving money to all seniors? There's a lot of seniors who are very well off, so I'm just wondering why the decision is made to give it to all seniors.
Well, we are focusing on those less fortunate in our society. We're one of the most generous provinces in offering support to people who can't find work or people who are unable to support themselves financially. We offer some of the broadest benefits and most generous benefits to assist people in finding accommodation in the country. We continue to offer those programs. We've actually enhanced several of those programs during the pandemic. So I would argue that this is a deserved benefit and a respectful one for our seniors.
And my follow-up question is about the workforce expenditure reductions that we talked about yesterday. Are they temporary, like for several months, for a full year, or are they permanent?
The plan is for the workforce reductions to reflect our need right now to have more resources available to our front line. Our front line people are in need of that support, and so what we have also found is that throughout various government operations there's not as full a requirement for a full day's work in many of the offices that are now closed, obviously, and many that are being only partially opened or underutilized. So the idea here is to find resources that are for the use of our front line during this pandemic, and that is what we've done to the tune of about 3% of our labor force obligations.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. On the workforce numbers, what we had yesterday was cutting that workforce by 2.2%. Could you give us actual numbers of how many people are being handed pink slips temporarily right now?
No, I can't do that, Brittany, because that's being negotiated, I understand, between various departments. We have dozens of departments involved, not just in government, but outside in places like our crown corporations, in various other funded agencies and so on and so forth. But I would say that the overall impact, as you've pointed out, it would be less than 3%. Those resources will be helpful in offsetting some of the additional needs for our front line. And I should also mention that apart from some employees over at Liquor and Lotteries, there's been nobody laid off in government to this point in time. We've been paying everyone in full, regardless of the fact that many have not had, as full a day's work as they'd like. And so we'll continue to make sure that we're avoiding every opportunity that we're avoiding layoffs. That's what's been this government's approach from the time we came to government 4 years ago.
Thank you. And my follow-up is when it comes to public sector employees and the discussions that are ongoing with the unions, has a list of who is essential and who is non-essential and how many workers that could involve for that shortened work week. Has that been discussed and finalized yet?
No, I would say though I'm very appreciative of some of the public sector leaders and certainly most of the members. I've gotten lots and lots of communication from members saying they're ready to do their part. They'd be happy to take a little time off over the summer and help the front line. People are very, very supportive. Not everyone. We got a couple of grievances filed by one union because they didn't like us redeploying people from MPI who weren't really needed and weren't working because there weren't claims, and helping us move professional protective equipment over at Health Sciences Centre. I just don't think these kinds of grievances are helpful. we should be pulling together and trying. We've used redeployment. We'll continue to use redeployment to keep people working. That's been my goal as Premier, and it's been our government's goal since we came into government 4 years ago.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. It's Drew May here from the Brandon Sun. On the workforce reductions announced yesterday, when the plan first came to light, province was talking about cuts of up to 10, 20, 30%. But yesterday, obviously, we only saw about 2.2% cuts. So just wondering why that number came in so much less than might have been forecasted.
Well, frankly, Drew, I explained this numerous times on these calls that this exercise is one we've undertaken every year since we came to government. We ask for plans to be brought forward by our management throughout the government and through the Crowns to look at ways they could go about saving money, whether it's redeploying unused resources or disposing of assets or in terms of labor force management. These are theoretical plans. Much has been said over the past few weeks by some in the media about this being a plan to cut the civil service dramatically. That has never been the case, was never the case. And again, I would just simply say this is an approach we've taken to try to find the best possible use of resources. And in this particular instance, during a pandemic, we're trying to find resources for the front line of our civil service, at the healthcare side in particular.
Okay. Thank you. And just to follow up on the announcement today, but today you're announcing a $45 million for seniors, but if the pandemic continues, could we be seeing more support announced?
Well, this is a one-time deal. We're hoping the pandemic is a one-time deal too, Drew. So quite frankly, this is to show our appreciation to our seniors. It's a benefit we think that the seniors deserve, and they have been the group that I would argue has been perhaps the most impacted in terms of stress of any group in our province. I know others would feel differently perhaps, but I can tell you that as we watch the news and as we see the numbers come in and how they're disproportionately impacting on seniors, I know there's a tremendous amount of stress that our seniors are experiencing. This is just a payment to try to help offset some of the financial impacts this pandemic is having on their lives.
From CJOB, Richard.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Richard Kluche from 680 CJOB. Premier, now that some businesses are allowed to reopen, we're hearing from business owners that they're finding it difficult to actually rehire workers because some are really happy to sit at home collecting the CERB. Now, you've been critical of this in the past. Now that businesses are allowed to reopen, some owners are telling us it's tough to rehire those workers. We'd be interested in your view on the program and your philosophy based on this and those who are deciding to stay at home as opposed to getting out and working.
Yeah, this isn't a philosophical issue for people, Richard. I'm hearing from the Chambers of Commerce, the business associations, Retail Council, and many, many others about their challenges, and I've remarked on it as a reality that when people are being paid under the CERB program not to work, that naturally some of them are less inclined to look for work. This is not a criticism. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's not a criticism of the federal government. It's a comment on the reality of the situation. And the reality is, according to small business owners across the province, they're telling us that they're having a challenge trying to get people to come back to work while they're on the CERB benefit. Now, I would say to those who are on the CERB benefit right now, remember, it's going to run out. And when it runs out, that job that you didn't want to take a month ago might not be there. You might find that somebody else is in that job. And so your short-term benefit is going to be eaten up by your long-term cost. In Manitoba, we have the backbone of our province's economy is small businesses, and they need your help right now. We've set up the most generous GAP program in the country to support those small businesses. We just launched it and got the portal going on Friday. We've already got more than 500 businesses paid with money in their accounts to help them get back on their feet. And we're going to keep doing that kind of work with our small business sector, but we need our workers to understand that it's in their best interests to get back to work as soon as it's safe to do so. And I'm not telling someone with COVID symptoms to get back to work. Let's be really clear about that. If you haven't had a test yet, go and get your test done, and we'll make sure, we all want to make sure that you're healthy and well. But we also need our economy to work, and there are consequences to an economy not working that, we all pay for in this province. So we want safety, we want you to be safe and secure in the workplace, and we want you to be back in the workplace earning your pay more than taking a subsidy. If you can get a job, find a job, get it, and we'll get you back in the workforce and we'll help.
And Premier, by way of follow-up, let's follow up on that economic development question. You have a multi-million-dollar project at Polo Park, part of it on the former Bomber Stadium land that, according to the proponent, is shovel-ready. How important is it that these types of projects get approved and fast-tracked to keep really our economy going, bring it back? Yes, in the case of Polo, there's a balance here between the airport authority that is rightly concerned about the long-term 24-hour status of the airport. But in your view, Premier, how important is it to get this done sooner rather than later? And take a moment and explain your thinking behind this, please.
Sure. Well, actually, Richard, I'm going to have something to say in the next couple of days in more detail about our infrastructure strategies here in Manitoba. As far as the specifics, I understand that City Council is dealing with the application process right now, so I respect their challenges in doing so. And I've always felt that infrastructure investments were a key way for us to grow our economy, and in particular now, given the circumstances that we face as a country, as a province, I think it's very appropriate to engage in thoughtful investments in infrastructure, not just because they're shovel-ready, but because they're shovel-worthy.
From the Winnipeg Sun, James.
Good morning. This is James from the Winnipeg Sun. My question is supplemental to financial aid for seniors. I'm wondering, with the reopening strategy being slowly deployed, will there be an emphasis on enhancing protection for people most vulnerable to COVID-19, the elderly and those with potential comorbidities? So I'm just thinking about extending isolation potentially for people who are vulnerable.
Yeah, no, it's a very important topic, isn't it? Because we know that the likelihood of seniors or people with vulnerable health preconditions is greater as a consequence of COVID. So we want to be sure that procedures are adopted and practiced at the retail level, for example, that assure the safety of customers. And I know small businesses want that too. I would say that the small business owners in our province are the ones most dedicated, quite frankly, to making sure that the experience is a safe one when you're in their store, when you're shopping there. I wanted to say a thank you to the Retail Council and John Graham in particular for his cooperation as we have moved to have more exclusivity and earlier hours available to seniors and vulnerable people so that they can do their shopping in a safer environment. And we are looking at further dialogue on that particular issue as well.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
From CBC Radio Canada, Mohammed.
Hello, bonjour, Mr. Premier. It's Mohammed from Radio Canada. I have a question about the announcement of the federal government this morning. Could you share your thoughts about on the $252 million for the agriculture sector announced by the federal government this morning?
Mohammed, I'm sorry, you clicked in and out on me and I didn't get the gist of the question, so I'm going to ask you to repeat it if you don't mind.
No problem. Could you share your thoughts on the $252 million for the agriculture sector announced by the federal government this morning?
Oh, I can't give you great insights into that. I have only learned of it, and I don't know the details involved in the announcement this morning. I can only say that support for the agricultural sector is needed, that it is a tremendously important sector to not just the Manitoba economy, but the Canadian economy. And I know that we are all going to do better when farmers do better. So we want to make sure that whatever programs the federal government announces, we review, and where appropriate, if there is a need for provincial support to complement what the federal government is doing, it's something that we will give full consideration to.
Thank you. And as a follow-up regarding Minister Fielding's announcement yesterday, we heard that question a few times. Maybe it's a silly question, but just to be clear, the 2.2% workforce reduction, is that 2.2% in each and every department, or is that 2.2% of the whole broad range of everybody in civil service?
No, it's a very good question. Let's be clear, it varies by department and agency. Some agencies have had a real decline in work. The need for workers has been greatly reduced. Obviously, I could give you an example, I suppose, with liquor and lotteries, with the casinos closing. There's a much greater contribution coming from liquor and lotteries towards the front line because they haven't had the need for as much work in that area of government. Conversely, on the healthcare side, of course, the expenditures are higher, not lower, and there's no saving whatsoever to be derived. In fact, the idea of this exercise, in part, is to find savings for the healthcare and social services sectors where expenditures are greater and the need for work and workers full-time plus is growing as well. So it varies by department. Some departments, far less work being done because, half of government offices approximately are either fully or partially closed. So there's less of a need in a number of those areas. But I would say again, we are engaged in detailed discussion, which I would see us advancing over the next few weeks and months to improve the way we deliver services, to modernize it, if you will, to respond in part to the challenges of COVID, but also to seize the opportunity to do a better job of allowing people, for example, to work from a mobile setting or at home than has been the case in the past. The other agencies have done this, private sector has done this, and we can seize this. This is just one example of some of the advantages we've derived from the exercise of asking for various government departments to give us input on ways to proceed. The short term is a small savings, small reduction in payroll, but the long-term savings are a better government that delivers services more effectively.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Mr. Premier Bart from CBC, what's the financial logic behind providing the tax credits to higher income seniors?
Well, I guess they'd be about the same as the supplying of an old age security benefit to Canadians or supplying a Canada Pension Plan benefit to Canadians partly. The advantages are that there be an ability to sustain one's life and support one's expenses. That's what we're trying to do here in an efficient and I think an effective way by giving a payment to all Manitoba seniors. Disproportionately, those on lower income will derive a greater percentage advantage from a flat $200 than would someone in a higher tax situation.
Thank you for that. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you spoke about speaking to your federal counterparts about help for the potato growers, the cattle farmers, pork producers. I also asked about commercial fishers. What is the province of Manitoba going to do to aid those sectors in the coming weeks or months?
Well, I suppose in part, Bartley, because we all know where the pockets are deeper, we have done some of our job by raising the issue with Ottawa repeatedly, and that is something I thank our Minister of Agriculture, Blaine Peterson, for doing. I have certainly raised the issue on our calls with the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. But again, I will have to review the federal announcement from this morning in more detail before I can give you, fulsome comment on the degree to which those requests have been answered. Nonetheless, we understand the importance of agriculture to this economy very well.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press, Premier. I asked the following because I've seen these types of checks go out in other provinces under varies across the country, the format used. Is your name going to be on the checks? Is there going to be any indication that it's either partisan or coming from the Premier?
Well, I don't plan on using this for re-election, if that's what you're asking, Steve. The intent here is really just to show the respect I think all Manitobans have for our seniors, regardless of political stripe. So I would just say that. You know, I think it's an important gesture, and I think it's one that most Manitobans would support and share in.
Okay, now a follow-up question about the deficit number. Mr. Fielding repeated yesterday that the government's looking at a $5 billion deficit. I realize that we're in unknown territory, and these are very general ballpark figures subject to change. But one of the big banks came out last week with a look at provincial deficits, and they're estimating that Manitoba's deficit will be closer to $1.5 billion. So my question is, are you still sticking to the $5 billion? Are there not partially offsetting savings that are occurring in the healthcare system, for example, by having a reduced amount of surgeries over these past several weeks?
Yeah, I've heard lots of projections too, Steve. I hope that the lower deficit projection's right. I don't think that's any secret. We are the most indebted people in the country. Our accumulated debts, unless one closes their eyes and ignores hydro, which I don't know why one would do because it's owned by Manitobans, our accumulated debt is higher than every other province per capita already, so adding to it is not a great thing. That being said, I wanted to go back for a second because I didn't adequately answer Bartley's question. I just wanted to say that it should be clear that this payment to seniors is not one which would cause any carve-out of another senior's benefit. So for example, with the guaranteed income supplement that some seniors in low income categories require to support themselves, this payment doesn't result in that being carved down at all. Same thing for various other benefits, provincially or federally. So there's no negative impact on a senior, just a $200 benefit, not a carve back on any other program. I think it's important to understand that. Back to your question, Steve, just say I think Manitobans understand that there's going to be a deficit. As we move through the reality of the situation, we'll be giving ongoing reports on progress. It's clearly our hope that we don't dig Manitoba into an even deeper debt hole than it's already in, but at the same time, we want to make the necessary investments, as we've been doing, to support Manitobans in a variety of ways through this valley, and we hope it's a valley of short duration, but it's a valley that we have to get through, and we will get through it together.
From CTV Winnipeg, Jeff.
Hello, Mr. Premier. Jeff Keel, CTV Winnipeg. We've heard from seniors that, 200 might not cover all the costs here. Is your government is there any serious consideration to waiving, drug dispensing fees?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And my follow-up, as we approach phase 2 of the reopening, and I know we're not there yet, we're in early May, can you update Manitobans who want to visit loved ones in hospital? I've been getting questions on that. They want to know, is there a time frame? Is there a plan? Obviously, unfortunately, Mr. Premier, your family's had to go through this, I'm sure, recently. What can you tell Manitobans? Is there any kind of time frame, anything the province is looking at of when loved ones could go visit family members in hospital?
Yeah, we have had to go through it, and I know many families are in the same boat, Jeff, and it's a miserable boat to be in. So I'll just say I defer to the doctor on these issues. I think this is where our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Russin's expertise has been so invaluable to me and to the people of Manitoba over the last number of weeks. And I'd also say the same of Lynette Siragusa and her advice. These are some of the most difficult times for many families right now. I'm really pleased that we're able to make the progress we've made in reopening the opportunity for people to get elective surgeries, for example, and other medical procedures and testing done. We're making progress. I'll just say again, thank you to Manitobans for helping us make that progress. It isn't the government that's going to make the progress, it's the people of Manitoba that are going to make the progress. And so I say thank you to you for doing the things you must do to keep taking care of yourself. I know that, and you know, that a wonderful spring and summer is ahead of us. You know that the temptation to forget is going to be very real. I encourage all of you to follow the guidelines, the social distancing practices, the hand washing. I encourage you to encourage others to do the same. I encourage you to continue to repeat these instructions to your children and grandchildren to make sure that they're following these practices, because together we can beat this thing. Keep up the great work. Thanks, everybody.